A third straight night of protests. It happened in Charlotte last night, but so far, no violence.
This is a Fox News alert. Hundreds ignoring that midnight to 6 a.m. curfew, shutting down a highway and chanting for the release of the footage of the shooting of Keith Scott.
Geraldo is right here on the couch to join us to talk about this situation down there in Charlotte.
You know, I think that the first night was really substandard policing. They were caught by surprise, they were undermanned, and they were much too passive. The second night, though, with the National Guard there and with enormous additional resources from the state troopers, I think they should have brought buses to the highways and made mass arrests. In my day, when I was a demonstrator in Washington, D.C. in 1969, 1970, you know, they would round us up, keep us for a certain amount of time to cool off, clear the streets, and it was the threat of arrest of whether they were going to prosecute, you know, process the, you know, and put an arrest on your permanent record that really deterred at some point. And those were much more massive protests. I think they should have been a little bit more proactive. But I think that, you know, the fact that there was no violence is important.
Sure, although one guy wound up dying, one guy was shot.
That was on night one, right?
Right, exactly. But when you look over the last year or so of protests, let's harken back to Baltimore, where essentially the mayor came out later and said, yeah, we let people loot and riot because...
Blow off steam.
Yeah, blow off steam.
As you recall, I was on the streets of Baltimore, and that was absolutely right and very frustrating to watch. But I must also point out a phenomenon that I've seen evolve. You know, this is reporting. I have seen a phenomenon whereby night one is relatively spontaneous and local. That tends to be the worst of the initial violence. If there is looting, that's when it happens. By night two, it's not just local people.
The agitators.
By night two, and I've seen this since the Seattle G20 anarchists. It's the same people. Yeah. Then they became Occupy, and now they're Black Lives Matter. But it's really, in some cases, the same folks. When you see a racial protest and you see young white people, I guarantee you they're not local, unless there's a big college right there nearby. They've been flown in. They have a quick response team. It's almost like the military. They're organized. Social media is so vast, so highly evolved. Okay, come to 20th and Raleigh at, you know, 10:13. And we'll do such and such. And you can see it. They are just as organized as the police forces that are sworn to protect the citizens.
Well, now we're learning that 70% of the people that are protesting are not even from North Carolina.
Exactly my point, Ainsley. Right.
So yesterday, some of the protesters saying things that aren't nearly as positive as you would imagine. Listen.
Keith Scott! Keith Scott! Trayvon Martin! Trayvon Martin! Sandra Bland! Sandra Bland! Emmett Till! These are the people that we're fighting for, and so many more that I can't even name the names. They could go on forever. But these are the people that we're fighting for. These are the people that we're marching for. People that we're standing up for. So don't be scared. Don't be scared of the revolution. There can't be revolution without a little bloodshed. So we have to shed a little blood, so be it.
Shed a little blood.
I think that fellow is a wannabe. I really do believe that we have to go back to what's going on here. You have two things happening. You have this gigantic epidemic of black-on-black violence, and it is a serious problem also in the Latino community, not quite as egregious, but you have the that creates a climate. So you bring in the cops.
Things are already tense.
You bring in the cops to those neighborhoods, and the cops see the worst of us in terms of they see, you know, people being killed on a nightly basis. They come to generalize about an entire class of people and consider them a menace, young black thugs, quote unquote. They become a menace, so the cops respond. They are trained to respond, and they also conditioned by their environment to consider people that now they're not just after someone for what they are doing, they're after someone for who they are. That's what leads you. Thousands and thousands of black-on-black deaths, but you also have hundreds of blue-on-black violent encounters that lead to these
let me ask
tragic
you, Geraldo,
situations.
why is this happening in 2016? Was this a problem in 2000, in 1995, in 1990? Why is all of a sudden this thing, the stats don't read out that this is an epidemic that's growing in America? Why are we reacting like it is?
I think that's a brilliant question. And I think it exactly tracks with the evolution of social media. Nowadays, you get to these situations, and every one of them is in communication with every other one of them.
You're saying it's like a flash mob.
It started socially. It has now been, and Occupy really evolved it, and Black Lives Matter picked up on it. It has turned out to be the MO. Now what police are doing, the smart departments, confronted by these kinds of situations, like the NYPD, they monitor all of these social media sites as soon as they find them, because this is a kind of more benign version of the threat to us from terrorists. What if terrorists are as evolved? What if this schmuck from Jersey that allegedly blew up the bomb in Chelsea last week, what if he had his colleagues, and he may have, we still don't know, and they were also social media, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to blow mine now on 23rd, you blow yours on 27th, you blow yours on around the shore with the Marines, their race, their marathon, all right, you do one on Long Island, you do one at the airport, okay, ready, okay, go Joe, go Ahmed, go Harry. You know, I think that this is something we must be just as evolved, just as technically have prowess as the bad guys.
Geraldo, are you in favor of stop and frisk? Because Donald Trump says he wants to bring it back. We had Mayor Giuliani on yesterday, and he was saying it really worked when he was the mayor of New York.
That's a great question. I think that New York is the model. New York used stop and frisk. It caused a lot of friction, but it helped accelerate the downturn in crime. Although Chicago does have a modified version of it, I would suggest that Donald Trump is exactly right in a city like Chicago, where there is an emergency, where someone is being killed, you know, every 12 hours.
500 homicides.
So it's okay. So you've got to, you know, it's what, every
more than
20
one
hours
a day.
or so.
Right.
You know, I think that in that situation, if you have a group of people on the corner, the cops should have the right to go up and say, okay, what do you got? What's going on? What's that buzz there?
It's all about. You're a lawyer. It's all about reasonable suspicion. If the guy's walking the beat and he sees somebody and it looks like, it does look like that guy's got something right there, why not?
The counter-argument is racial profiling, but if you have black-on-black violence or brown-on-brown violence, or if you have inner-city violence, that's what you've got to do. You're not going to go stop and frisk the 73-year-old lady in the wheelchair, obviously. It's a deflection of resources. Let's be practical about it. Let's do what we have to do. I know that stop and frisk by one federal judge in New York was found to be unconstitutional. But the NYPD never appealed that verdict.
Because we switched mayors.
So we switched mayors. So we got you know, a hard left-wing mayor who said, I'm not appealing, I'm dropping it, you win. We should really have an appellate court litigate what is appropriate for police when confronted with an emergency, because there is no doubt that inner city violence is an emergency, but not in every city. We know the cities: Newark, New Orleans, Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, now Chicago. We know the cities. I think that we have to be practical about it. I also think, however, that you cannot ignore the fact that hundreds of black men are being killed by cops. Hillary is right in that regard. Trump is right in the big picture, the climate that's created. But I think the answer lies somewhere in between.
Well, when you look at what happened in North Carolina, you know, in the video, we don't know whether or not it's going to be released, but according to the police chief, ABC is reporting this, the police chief has looked at the video. You can clearly see the guy holding a gun when he's outside of the car. You just can't tell whether or not he points the gun in the officer's direction, and that's why the family has questions.
One of the least favorite mayors, certainly on the curvy couch in this country, is Rahm Emanuel of Chicago. Rahm Emanuel of Chicago, best friends of President Obama, almost lost his mayoralty because of the refusal or the sloppy release a year after the fact of the video of the shooting of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. Right. The video, had that been released earlier, it would the anger would have dissipated. It would have changed everything. They could have done remedial steps, but they hid it. Finally releasing it, and it shook the administration in Chicago to its core. Why not release this video?
I don't know.
Why not? What is the logic of not releasing it?
It's the body cam that they don't want to release.
Because we're in the middle of an investigation. I don't know how that could hurt the
I'm a
investigation,
lawyer.
though.
It doesn't matter.
But the family saw it. Does that help?
And the family is suggesting that it be released, Brian. Doesn't that tell you everything? I understand not releasing the names of GIs who get murdered or get killed in action until their relatives are notified. I understand that. Same with the police action. The relatives in this case, however, have seen the video. They have signed off on it. Release the video.
We're going to have the governor of North Carolina on the program in a half an hour.
Governor McCrory?
Yep.
Give my regards.
Geraldo, have a good weekend.
Geraldo.
Thank you.
Thank you.